Hey there, and welcome back to Checkbox Other, the podcast that celebrates those that don't fit in any defined box or category. I am your host, Nikki Innocent, and I am so glad that you are here today. We have an incredible episode, and before I hop into telling you all about Carla, I have a couple updates per usual to start off the episode. So first, I have to acknowledge that this episode was recorded during that wonderful pocket of time when I had nice congestion. I tried to remove some of the sniffles, but I've got a bit of a deeper voice during this one, so enjoy. Also, if you follow me on social media, you've seen a couple of these things, but I am so excited to share that both of my TEDx videos are now available for your viewing pleasure. So if you head on over to my Linktree account or over to my website onto the nikkyinnocent.com/speaking page, you will be able to find both of the TED Talks there. I hope you enjoy those. I'm just so excited that they are available to share with the world now. I have also mentioned in previous episodes, there was a workshop in the works, a live in-person workshop for anybody that's located in Boston or wants to head on over to Boston to join us for the workshop. It is now live. It is called the Embrace Your Other Workshop. It coincides with the first TEDx talk that I did, along with the amazing insights and superpowers that we've heard from so many of the amazingly generous guests we've had on this podcast. So it will be a one-day workshop. We will have a small group of people that are going to dive into our stories of otherness and the wonderful gifts that we have that have come out of those experiences of feeling different or other. And then the second part of it is to tap into the otherness to activate our superpowers, to see your purpose and your passion embodied, to know what those next steps in life are, to step more into a holistic version of the life you want to lead. So I am beyond excited to get to do some of this work in person with hopefully you. And if there's anybody else in your world that you want to share this information with, you can head on over to nikkyinnocent.com. It should be in the top banner in there. But if not, it's nikkyinnocent.com/embrace-your-other. Pretty self-explanatory there. And then I just want to say I've been getting some really great feedback from the listeners on the website. So if you head on over to the podcast page or even the contact page, there's the ability to drop some love into a form to let me know what you think about the podcast, what you'd love to hear more about. If there are any guests that you think would be amazing for the podcast, feel free to head on over to the website, nikkyinnocent.com/podcast, and add some of your insights there. I think it's under the Join the Conversation link on that particular page. I mentioned this briefly last time, but I also am launching a Millennial Roundtable, which is a free participation opportunity for anybody that was born from 1981 to 1997, I believe are the dates that I've got in there. This is just going to be a series of conversations and a series of opportunities for millennials to have conversations about the future of the world that we'd like to see, the rules that are in place right now that don't work for us, and all that good stuff. So it's a great way to build your network, to have your voice be heard and your story be seen. I mean, my favorite things to do in this world. And then finally, I need to geek out for a second because I've mentioned a couple times in these podcasts before that I grew up playing soccer, and soccer was pretty much my first language, if you put it that way. I had a soccer ball at my feet before I could walk, and I have just been having the best time watching the Women's World Cup. If you haven't watched yet, I really do encourage you to watch. The first round just ended this week, and we're heading into the do or die rounds. So super exciting. The U.S. team is amazing. Cameroon came out with an incredible win at the end of their game today. And so I don't know, if you haven't watched it yet, I do encourage you to put a slot in your schedule to watch at least one of the games because they're really, really exciting. The craziest part is I was looking through some old stuff this past week and I found a ticket from I believe it was the 99 World Cup that I went to with my dad, and the tickets were $20, which is just crazy to think about. We went to 3 games, I believe, that day. It's amazing. And then next to that, I found a ticket that was for us to meet the players. So a couple months after the World Cup, we actually went and met the players. And Christine Lilly was from Connecticut, so I thought we were, we were supposed to meet. We were meant to be, because I'm a World Cup player too at that point when I was 14 years old. I swear I can do math. And then finally, one of the most inspiring things that's happened since last episode was that I went to a book event for Elaine Welteroth. If you don't know who she is, please do Google her. I will drop her new link to her book and her information in the show notes. But I went and saw her on an event for her book tour. Her book came out this past week. It's called More Than Enough. And she talks about her experiences as a biracial woman stepping into rooms where she is the only and really just kicking ass and taking names. And I'm just so excited. I got her book this week. And of course, I've mentioned before, I like to listen to them. So I have the book and I've started reading it, but I'm hoping that I can listen because I believe she does the audio for it too. Do some underlining in the book as I do listening. Super excited. I definitely recommend for you to check it out. And I think it'll probably be within our book club. Speaking of book club, if you have not checked it out already, please do head on over to my Patreon page. It's patreon.com/NikkiInnocent, where you can join our digital fan club. You can learn about the different tiers that we have for support. The minimum would be to be offering up $1 per episode. So if you're liking this, I know I mentioned it in the previous episodes, it's $1 an hour. I'm hoping that that's something that's okay to be asking about here, because I feel like the amount of work that's going into this and the amount of time that you're spending here, I'm hoping $1 is worth it. So please do feel free to head on over to patreon.com/NikkiInnocent and become a patron. There is I believe it's past the VIP level. I'm not sure, maybe it's the leadership level that has the book club component to it. So take a look on the tiers there and you will see information. And then, you know what? I think I'm done talking for a minute about all this stuff. Let me dive into our wonderful guest today. My guest today is Carla and Eyck. Oh my goodness, is she an incredible human being? I met Carla back in 2011 when I was looking for a photographer for my corporate photo shoots to rebrand Bain Capital's websites. She came in and just knocked our socks off. She had bright pink hair, and needless to say, pink hair was not the norm in the halls of Bain Capital. She was the first person to introduce me to the word hamster wheel when talking about the corporate life. She gave me such a wonderful outside perspective and really showed me what it looked like to do what you love. We talk about so many different aspects of othering, of life experience, of embracing our other, and I am just so excited for you to hear it. We talk about our ambiguous identities from a visual perspective. We also talk about her experience of parenting through the self-discovery in her life, and also through this time in our society when there is a lot of identity work and a lot of identity conversation and exploration happening. We also talk about wrestling with the shame that comes along with whiteness at times, and then what whiteness is in general. I also want to make sure that I mention, because I thought this was it flowed through the entire experience. We talk a lot about belonging. We talk about being enough. I bet if you get $1 for every time we said enough, you'd make a good buck for this particular episode. And then finally, Carla and I talk about the difference between growing your business from a scaling your business perspective and bringing on new people to what success really looks like in business. Is it that you have a whole lot of people on your team? Is it that you're making a whole lot of money? Is it that you have a gazillion clients? Or are there other metrics of success that can come about? So I think that that's a pretty good summary of what we got going on. I don't want to give it all away here, but I really hope you enjoy the episode. If you do enjoy the episode and you have not subscribed already, please do subscribe. Also, I do want to encourage to share this episode or any other episodes that you've really enjoyed with people in your network. I'd love to hear how I had somebody reach out to me this week and say, oh my goodness, what your TED Talk specifically was something that she shared with all of her colleagues and her boss. Talking about breaking the rules and rewriting them and sending it to her boss made me a little nervous, but it was so exciting that her boss was all about it. So it's amazing what happens when you connect with people over our shared humanity. And I really encourage you, if anything resonates with you or you think will resonate with somebody else, please do feel free to send this podcast episode along, or any of the others, or my TED Talks, or anything. I am so excited to hear how these stories go and love to hear from each and every one of you. I am done talking. I will catch you on the other side of this episode. I hope you enjoy. Hi, Carla.
Hi, Nikki.
I'm so happy you're here. It's so wonderful to have you in my life. It's been too long.
I know, my face hurts from the smile.
Already. Right?
Oh my God.
Yeah, we're going to have to do some like facial workouts to get through this.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, I am so grateful that you are here, knowing that you are a podcast aficionado. Oh, I'm so amped for this conversation on top of it all. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hand the mic over to you for you to tell us a little bit about your journey and what has led you to who you are today and the amazing Carla and Eyck that I know in my life and I love.
Oh my God. That is like the world's most loaded question. And I don't know how everyone manages to kind of shuffle through this. Well, God, I feel like I've had like the world's longest meander through to get back full circle back to you, which is so, it's all a series of little connections in life, right? That just bring people in touch to begin with and then circle back around. And I feel like that's like a huge part of where I'm at in my journey as a photographer and a mother and a podcaster myself. So, I mean, I've done photography my whole life and was guided by some really wonderful people who saw talent in me and just kind of herded me along the way. And this was before there was no email, there was no cell phones. It was like a literally handwritten letters and phone calls to my mom saying, "Where's Carla living now? I've got this great internship for her. I've got this great, opportunity for her." And so Sherman Williams was a photographer at the Harper Current who guided me along, helped me decide to go to school for photography, got me involved in lots of really important big things, and helped me see who I was as a storyteller, which is really special and important and big for me. Then I segued from photography after going, full tilt for years. I was very, very focused kid. Which is kind of weird now that I'm looking at what teenagers are like now. I'm like, I was so focused. Like, what is my deal? But I was very, very driven to be a photographer for a very long time. And then I got burnt out and decided to waitress because that's like a natural segue. And that was like life school. If you've not waited tables, it's almost like a rite of passage to do that. And then that segued into working at a law firm, which I felt like was my version of business school. Then I met my husband. We ended up getting married. And when I was pregnant with my first child, I had a tough pregnancy, ended up not going back to work and just segued back into photography. It was just like a real natural thing. And then just started doing weddings, which were really fun to go to and bring my camera and just kind of have no responsibility as a guest. Started photographing, and then people loved what I was doing. And I was like, wow, people are going to pay this money for this? All right,
yes.
This is fun. And this is all pre-digital. Oh, for son of a gun. Sorry, we're going to have to cut this.
No, you're fine.
Only because I just rambled and I ruined it. I could have just sent a voicemail.
You're fine. You're fine.
So what was I just talking about? Circling back.
Oh, you get to go and photograph at parties and hang out and meet people.
Yeah, I get to photograph at my friends' weddings. I ended up liking what I was doing.
Yes.
And then it just was snowballed from there. One person led to seven led to 23, 23 led to 33, 33 led to you. Yes. And then I ended up meeting Dawn Briggs at a wedding.
I remember.
And she followed through, which is one of my favorite quotes is the fortune is in the follow-up. She followed through. She was at a photo booth of mine that I had, and she saw my work because I had a slideshow going. And she said, "We've been looking for someone like you." And she straight up followed up. I didn't think she would. And she did. Yeah. And it led to a very long job with Bain and Company, and then Bain and Capital, where I met you. And then in between there's just so many other things that have happened, but went from having a big company with, 8 to 12 people. And then now it's just me.
Oh, nice.
Yes. And I love it. I love it. I've cut everything out. I've really trimmed it down because I really want to focus on the client experience. Yeah. And I want my hand in everything right now, which is like, maybe counterintuitive to all the big business things out there, but it's not counterintuitive to me. That's how I want to run my life is, like the name of my podcast is called Eyes Up, Heart Open. That's how I want to be with everybody in my life. And if it means just trimming it down a little so I can really focus with that, then that's what's up. So
yeah. And I will be a witness to the magic you bring to a room. That like you bring it 110% and you energize everyone around you. So to allow yourself to really focus on the thing that makes you the best version of yourself, and to realize that, there are all these books that tell you, oh, you need to be looking to scale your business and bring all these people on and delegate everything. Sometimes that takes away from the magic that you bring to the party. So that's truly incredible that you've kind of gotten. I love this whole the cyclical nature of your journey. Oh, I love it.
Yeah. And it didn't even touch into like my family and growing up and how I was one of 9. And there was always a crowd with me. I was always one in a crowd. And I just, same thing with my business. It became the same type of thing, right? Then we became a crowd. And then now it's back to me, just like with my family. It's like, you're all family, but doesn't mean what you think it means. It doesn't have to mean that. It could be, family is whatever, they could be in your day to day, or they could be not in your day to day. And now it's just, my family is myself and my children and my girlfriend. And, when I see my family, but now it's up to me to tell my story and do what I'm going to do. So.
Yeah, I love that. And there's a part of it where it's your chosen family in that crowd too. You never know who kind of comes in, comes out, stays for the whole time. Sometimes people get a lead role and then they kind of are extras at times. So yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
I love it. The other thing that you mentioned Dawn Briggs, now Dawn Pomeroy, who is someone who has this magic ability to just see you, and her ability to walk by you and see who you are. And I remember the first time she talked to me about you, she's the kind of person that when she finds something that is magic, she can't help but tell everyone about it. And before I knew you, I knew I'd love you. So there is something so beautiful. Like you mentioned, Sherwin Williams was the guy that saw you at Hartford Current. Like, there are all these people that their lenses in life seem to be fixed on the clarity with which you bring things to the world. And so I love that you just said that. But chills through my body. So got to mention what I said.
I know, those are 2 really wonderful people. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I'm going to hop over into you sharing a time when you feel other. I feel like there are so many other aspects of who you are as Carla and the things in your life that I'm sure will come through in a couple of these. But I'd love to hear a story or 2 of other from you, of when you felt other different.
I feel like that concept is just this thread that's just kind of woven through lightly, not even lightly. Sometimes it's like a big chunky yarn with knots, and it's a tiny, tiny little thread, and it's golden and barely see it. And other times it's like strangling you, and other times it's just like a slight annoyance. But for me, growing up, my maiden name is Hernandez, so the other was not a guess. It was Hernandez. Oh, they're Mexican. Everyone knew. But my mom is, she was, of all different mixed stuff from Europe, and, blonde hair, green eyes, super duper white from Virginia. And then my dad is like super duper Mexican from Mexico.
Yeah.
And so it was pretty polarizing. And then you have me, the product of that. I look like my mother. I look a lot like my mother, but my coloring is my dad's. And so, like, on the surface, people are always like, are you Portuguese? Are you Italian? They're always doing the little guess. What are you? What are you? What are you? Well, after I got married, and I ended up keeping my ex-husband's name because I wanted to have the same name as my children. I was the secret. I was the other. I was like the secret minority. I was like the undercover minority. That's what I called myself, the undercover minority. Nobody knew. That whole feeling of being Mexican, coming from a family with 9 kids. 5 were adopted, 4 were biological. Mm-hmm. Everyone had a very deep story of trauma. This wasn't just like, oh, my family wants to adopt kids. They're like, it was just like these kids were coming from very, very traumatic environments where, their parents were murdered, or actually all of them were. And like 2 of my sisters are related. 2 of my brothers are related they're biological to themselves. And then my one sister, she is her own person. She's just such a fighter. Yeah. But there, so there's that story woven into my story, and everyone's always like, just like, tell me more about your family. It sounds so nuts, Yeah, and then on top of that, my mother always had animals. So and animals not in the normal sense of like, she had every tropical bird, she had goats, she had chickens, she had geese, she had ducks, we live in the city, we live in Hartford. Like, this isn't like we live in like Wyoming and like the hills.
Right.
I mean, granted, we have a nice little yard. It goes to a river, but and I currently live in that house now.
Yes.
But we did not live in the hills in the country where you would expect to have all this. So that's a big other that I don't think you're going to have on your podcast. Right. Like that alone is enough. And then having like 8 siblings is another one. And then having the mix of, all my adopted siblings are Puerto Rican, and then we're Mexican, and then they're all there's some special needs. I have some siblings with special needs. And then what else? That was a huge one for me. So being Mexican and then not speaking Spanish. That is such a thing. It's like you're Mexican, but you're not Mexican enough. So to my Mexican family, we're white. And to all my white family, we're Mexican. My white friends thought I was like the rare exotic bird of a friend. And they loved telling my stories to their friends. Yeah. And I always used to be so embarrassed by it because I'm like I felt like a weird show pony in a way of like, and then everyone would be like, oh. And it's like, I hate it. I don't really, it's interesting because when you just said, tell me your story, I didn't tell you any of that in the beginning. I'm like, that's not my defining thing anymore. Mm-hmm. So that was a huge thing. And then we didn't have a lot of money. We drove, we had shitty cars and had hand-me-down clothes. And like, I just never felt like good enough in that sense of, in the area I grew up in and the schools I went to, they were very mixed race and nobody really gave a shit. I think it's just one of those things as a kid, you just hold on to and you think it's still important. And then you realize as an adult, it's not, it's really not. Nobody really cares. Everyone's in their own head. Yeah. That's a big piece of my otherness. And then underneath all that is I always knew I was attracted to women, and my family's very open and very accepting. And, I have gay uncles and gay aunts and cousins, and it's just not a thing where you would think I would feel any hesitation coming out. But I didn't until I was, I don't know, maybe 40 or 41. I mean, I'd been married to a guy. What's the point of coming out and saying, oh, by the way, I like women too. Who gives a shit? Nobody cares. So it wasn't really a thing at that point. But then after getting divorced, I was just kind of realizing I was attracted to people, and had a couple of relationships. And now I'm in a very serious relationship with Melissa, who is just the best. And so having that, coming out to my children and, my family and everything was, it wasn't hard. They're very accepting, and I consider myself very lucky with that piece. But, if you look at me, I just look like a chubby soccer mom who probably drives a minivan that's like, lives in the suburbs. Like, do you know what I mean? But then like, if you just stop and have a conversation with me, there's so much stuff under the surface that it's like, I bring that thought process to everybody I meet and interact with. I try really, really hard not to make assumptions about people because you never know what their story is. Right. So yeah, those are just some tip of the iceberg others, I guess, that I've got. But
you
then
just
also
touched on so many. That was great.
I mean, but then the other thing is, it's like that whole, and all of the things I've been reading, I read a lot of like, business books or things about death and dying. I'm very into like analyzing grief, and I've experienced grief with my mother dying and then one of my best friends dying. The thing I came across in a lot of the things I've been reading, whether it's about business or about grief or just about being a good human, it's about this sense of belonging. Yes. At the root of it all, the secret to the universe is people just want to feel like they belong somewhere. Mm-hmm. So then when you have this kind of, the checkbox other thought, it's like, it so pushes you out of that feeling of belonging. Mm-hmm. But then in what you're doing, you're making people feel like they have a place to land, and I think that that's like one of the most beautiful things in life. If you can give somebody else that feeling, that's pretty powerful. And that's kind of where, I don't know, I saw you were doing this and I was like, this is amazing. Because it just resonates with me on so many levels. It's not just like this thing where you're like, oh yeah, this comes up every 17 days. It's like, no, every freaking day I think of this, and I think of like, people make fun of overweight people, or like things don't work for people that are left-handed, and I'm left-handed and I'm overweight. What the hell? It doesn't end. And I'm really short, and I have short arms. God, I have the list. Poor me. There's no box for that.
You know what the box is? The box is Carla and all of the wonderful you bring to the party. Are you kidding? Yeah, I think
Right.
the idea of belonging, and it's so interesting because our society in the world we live in, whether that be people, I think one of the things that you mentioned is everybody does their own things. People don't care. And I think when you get down to the humanity of it and you actually have to live and breathe with the person around you, it's really difficult to say, oh, well, you are this box. I can't hang out with you. I mean, it's happened. I've had people say to me, I can't date you because you're Black. I've been told that when I was 11 or 12, nice indoctrination. But like, there is this part of it that, as you mentioned, like you don't have the choice of whether or not you feel those moments of not enough and those moments of not belonging, whether that be the language you speak, if you speak it well enough, if you use the right grammar, if you watch TV, if you walk down the street and you see the pictures that are meant for you, if you are able-bodied and able to get on a train or get into a building, like there are so many aspects of our day-to-day that are seen as normal. And by labeling things normal, when people don't fit that, they feel like they don't belong. But giving the space to say, there are so many aspects of who I am that the world isn't made for, allows us to all understand, like, the world is actually not made for the majority of us. It really isn't. It's made for a very specific path in life that we've all been told is the right one because it just makes it easier to be efficient. But yeah, to really pull back and say, hold on, I'm not going to make that visual assumption. I think the visual one's the biggest, right? We've been told what's right and what's not, and what you can see from far away is very kind of animal instinct of us, right? And when you're out in the safari of sorts, right, and there is some sort of threat coming to you, as the animal background that we have is like, okay, fight, flight. How do I do this? What do I do? At this point, as human beings in the United States of America, most people that have a voice in places like a podcast don't live their lives in fight or flight in the kind of primal sense of it. And that's not to take away from people that don't necessarily have the means and have the ability to have a roof over their head. They might be in this fight or flight mode. But for some reason, the people that have the microphone, the people that have the platform, tend to have been saying the same story, speaking the same history, had that pen for history, so we all felt we had a shared one. And there's so many aspects that have been missed. So I don't think any person has explained their other in so many dynamic ways. And like, my body is like on fire because I love it and it's got chills. So I thank you, honestly, for being so open. I'm going to keep going on that a little bit, because one of the things that I noticed about you sharing your story is your willingness to be so generous and vulnerable with the things going on in your life where you don't have the answer, where you're willing to kind of work it out as a model for other people, whether you know it or not, right? And so I'd love to hear a little bit about how I witnessed it on social media, but how you've allowed people to really join or be a witness to your self-exploration.
You know what's so fascinating about you asking me this question is I feel like I didn't really get a perspective that others don't share as freely or openly as I do until I listened to you on your podcast and you brought up things that you're like, no, only people that are privileged know that about me. And I was like, oh, wait, she's not going to tell us. Oh my God. I'm like, she's got some boundaries here. This is good. And I was like so taken off guard because you ask me, chances are I'm going to tell you. Prepare yourself because I'm honest and I'm going to I'll share. I mean, some things are nobody's business for sure, but I didn't really get that other perspective until I listened to you. So when I started kind of thinking about the stuff that I share online, and I have had, a lot of people over the years, they message me privately and they'll say, I just like what you're saying resonates with me on such a big level. Like I'm living that right now. I'm walking that walk right now. And like, you're just so open about it. You're open about, working out and being overweight and still like, working out for 2 years, 5 days a week, an hour a day. I still was at 200 pounds. I couldn't break 200 pounds. Like, what the hell, like that's a big struggle. People aren't going to be saying their weight on any podcast or social media. Granted, I'm not 200 pounds anymore. I'm more than that, but I'm not going to tell you what that is, but because my scale broke, but I would, but I don't know what it is. But like, I just feel like there's, there's a fine line vulnerability. Like one of my friends, Tammy, was telling me like, there's a line to toe with that, where you could go too much, where people start seeing like you're broken instead of like you're surviving, right? And so I don't think I consciously do it. It's like you might mug me, but you better kill me because I'm going to go down fighting. Right. That's kind of what that is like with everything. It's like I'm going to share, but there's like this full circle, like even as I'm writing, because I don't premeditate my posts, I'm just like, I'm feeling this right now. And I really want to, this is speaking to me. It's bubbling up right now. I'm just going to like, I know it's not like the perfect Instagram post time. I could give a shit about that now. I'm sitting on the toilet going, I'm inspired. I'm going to write this. You know what I mean? And like, I know so many other people feel that way, but feel that they've got to curate their social media feeds for whatever reason. Yes. I'm a visual artist. I get my bread and butter is through photography. Yeah. People are going to find me that way. So I do have to kind of curate it to some degree, but it's not really that tempered back. Yeah. So in terms of like sharing on social media, it's just, I guess it just doesn't occur to me not to, which it's followed a line. It's not just all of a sudden I did that. I don't know if you guys ever, kept diaries when you were kids or journals. I was one of those girls, man. Mm-hmm. I still have them. They're so embarrassing. Yes. Oh my God. I love rereading them. I'm like, girl, you are a mess. What is up? And it's interesting to see like the journey of that. And obviously I wasn't really writing that for anybody to read at this point. Right. Have at it. I don't care. But then blogging came into being, and I've been an avid blogger since 2006, and I would write about everything and share openly. I photographed my mother's death. I photographed her. We took her off life support. I photographed, searching for her grave plot. I photographed her wake. I photographed my sisters doing her hair and makeup for her wake. Like, and it didn't occur to me not to. Yeah. If I didn't have my camera, my family would be like, what's the matter? What's wrong with you? Yeah. Like there wasn't a moment which I look at now, I'm like, okay, that was definitely a way of like hiding and kind of stuffing my feelings down a little bit, where I could just be in documentary mode and then deal with it later. Yeah. I know that, I see that obviously. But it doesn't occur to me to not, when I was searching for my friend Eric's body, I was taking photos. I was putting it on social media, and there's people saying, why are they sharing that on social media? I'm like, why wouldn't you? Right. Why wouldn't I share that, all this pain and heartache that we're going through looking for my friend who's got a wife who's pregnant and 2 young kids? People need to know that that's important, So, it's not that there's no filter for the sharing. It's just that I don't know. I feel like I've been put on this earth to connect with people. Yes. I know that about myself. And I recently was at a work retreat where I asked my other girlfriends if they've ever thought about that. Like, what's your main purpose in the world and life? And some had, some hadn't. And I knew with absolute certainty, I am put on this earth to connect with others. And I think that that's by being vulnerable and open and sharing. So
I love that. So many things. So many amazing things. It was like a sermon, a TED Talk, all the things in one. That was incredible. So there's so many things I just want to say. I feel like one of the things that is amazing to me is that there was some boundary work boundaries have been the biggest struggle of my last, I'll say 3 years, probably 34. And there is this, I don't know, Brene Brown. Do you follow Brene Brown at all? She talks about something that she calls floodlighting, which I actually don't think, well, I'm just going to talk to it a little bit. So floodlighting is this idea of thinking that you're being vulnerable, but what you're really doing is like oversharing so that people will come close. You're like kind of just, right? You're doing a lot and making people notice, but it's jarring to people. And I think it's so interesting because we're all our own most wonderful critic. So I read that and I'm like, shit, I do that all the time. And there is a part where it's different when you are acting as a representation of something that doesn't exist. You feel like you're floodlighting just by showing something that's different. So I think there's so much beauty in the fact that you choose to document the things that people don't, or people aren't used to, because we need to have the room and the space to actually live and experience life. A lot of times when we don't speak about them, or we don't have the language, or we don't have the experience, we shut it down as different and uncomfortable, so let's not deal with it. And the fact that you say, you have a gift behind the camera, and just by being you and using your voice, that allows people to see the things that they might not feel comfortable saying to their family because they don't have the language, or they learned from one thing or another that it's not okay there. So yes, oh my goodness, I've never seen anybody do that. That's a reaction. I feel like that's a reaction many times when you're doing something that people have never seen before, and their initial reaction is change is scary and different, and it's not allowed here. But the fact that you're like, you know what, I'm living, and you're welcome to be a part of it if you'd like to. And you sharing your mother's experience is something that is, I remember when you told me about it, it was like, it was a hug on the journey of how to overcome the grief that had happened in my life before. I think you're also, the work that you did around breast cancer, and your photography series there, and really showcasing these women with mastectomies and with scars, and saying, showing the beauty, because there's so much for our society that's hiding that, or feels there should be some shame or some covering that needs to happen, when really at the end of the day, these women are badass survivors, and they made it through some stuff that most people won't necessarily have to deal with. And so there's something so beautiful in the fact that you're willing to go to the place that other people aren't willing to be vulnerable in. And the gorgeous part of it is that you're like, I don't even have to think about it. I'm just doing it. Like, that's, again, like, I feel like, yes, you're put on this earth to be a connector, but I think you're also put on this earth because you're a boundary breaker in that same arena. Because there are a lot of people that'll connect in the safety of their home. You're welcome to my table, but here are the topics we're willing to talk about. And you're like, welcome to my table. We're going to talk about anything that comes up, and I'm not going to know it all. We're going to do it all together.
Yeah, that's it's an interesting space to get to, because I feel like that's right where I am this like past year, 2 years, where when I do go on getaways with girlfriends, they all know I'm about to get deep. And I'm like, all right, I actually bought this book called The Book of Questions. And I've been researching questions that are like just kind of weird things to ask people. But then when you really start digging through what they are, and discovering, like, do my friends believe in God? Do they believe in the universe? What are their spiritual beliefs? I don't know. And I think that at a lot of people's core, that guides their actions and their choices and their decisions and what they do in life, right? And if we don't even know from the place that everyone's starting, because we don't ask, and we don't want to be like,
inappropriate, politically incorrect.
Like, right. We don't want to talk about politics. You don't want to talk about religion. But I'm like, I just find it so beautiful to hear everyone's beliefs. Sometimes it's a little surprising.
Right.
Where, I have a couple friends, they don't believe in anything. They're like, yeah, when we die, we're taking a dirt nap. That's actually what she said. And I still laugh about it because that's such a weird phrase, dirt nap. It just sounds funny. So, and then I'm like, well, okay. So then instead of me judging her thought process, I start thinking, well, how would I behave in life if that's what I believed? Would that affect my decisions, my choices, how I treat people, how I treat myself, what I decide to do with my life? Or if you believe in, like, reincarnation, or, you're here in this lifetime with these certain soul clusters of people learning lessons in order to keep elevating your soul, which is kind of what I believe in. Like, what is that? Do I feel like this life is disposable? I don't. I feel like there's lessons, and I'm always looking. I'm like, okay, there's a lesson in this. What is it? Yeah. It affects how I think. Yeah. It affects my choices. It affects my conversations. It affects how I listen. So I just kind of been going back to square one with that piece, and breaking that boundary that could be a little uncomfortable for people. Yeah. Especially if they haven't thought about it. Because some people are like, yeah, I don't really think about it. I'm like, you don't? Tell me why. Yeah. And then they try to, like, give me the one word answer. I'm like, no. We're going to deep dive a little bit. I'm going to let you sit. I'm going to talk with Amanda next, and then I'm going to circle back to you. So start ruminating. And then they're like, but it's like, and it's, luckily I've built these relationships where people do feel safe with me being so bossy and saying that. Thank God. I mean, like, I'm super happy that people trust me with their answers, and they trust me enough to say I'm not comfortable talking about it if they want to. I mean, nobody has yet, but yeah. So I'll
just ask again later. Yeah. Yeah. No, but go ahead. I think the safe space is It's why people, I'm just circling back up to like you being at the weddings that you're at and people coming to you. Like there is something you're not like drawing the lines on the ground and be like, this is a safe space. Just by living the way you live, you create that space for people, whether they know they're going to open up and be vulnerable or not. By you living your life the way you do, you create that. And coming with curiosity. I think we met each other in a space where so many people think they are the experts and they are certain because they have XYZ piece of paper. And when you come into a room and there's wonder in your eyes, right? You're excited about what's there. You're willing to learn more. You're willing to absorb. You're willing to understand that like somebody else is different than you are. That creates that space, whether you say it or not. And I think you're so good.
Well, thank you for saying that about me. I think that's, it's always surreal hearing how other people take you in, right? How often do you get that opportunity for people to say, here's what I thought when I first met you, or here's the effect you have on me. I don't take that experience lightly, that I get to hear that from you. So thank you.
Oh, of course, of course. I've been hearing it a lot lately. Only in the sense that it's like, you come in hot. I'm like, I know, I've heard that for years, but they're like, no, it's good. I'm like, okay. Because the little kid in me is like, I know you want me to be quiet. Okay, fine. But now it's gotten to a point where it's like, I come in hot. Like, I'm proud of that. And that's how this is going to be. And the more you own that space, the more people are able to say, she is somebody that will come in and bring the energy, or she is someone that will come in and create a safe space. Like, again, same thing. We don't talk about politics. We don't talk about religion. We don't talk like societally. We also don't talk about, especially between women, we don't talk about the great things that we are and who we are and how comfortable we are in our own skin about certain things. We're so much more comfortable in talking about where our flaws are and where we might be uncertain or bad or not up to snuff. But God forbid we stood in a space where we said, I'm so freaking good at creating a safe space. And I am the best question asker that will make you a little uncomfortable, but we'll get there and you'll discover so many things about yourself and the people around you. That's what I'm magic at. And watch what happens. They can be in those spaces all the time. You'll be like, oh God, I spoke this into reality at every place I go. This is what I'm doing. Cool.
I know. And it could be exhausting sometimes where I'm like, I don't feel like asking questions today because I feel like my reserves are low. I need to replenish my energy and like balance that, that like kind of balls to the wall attitude of like just coming in hot, asking questions, feeling, like you could be safe, I got you, and then I'm like, oh my God, I'm like so depleted now,
Yes,
it's a hard balance for sure.
It's funny. So in the first podcast episode, I did it with my cousin Megan, and she's a therapist. She's the best. She talks a lot about filling your water jug, and that if you are, so you're coming in, I'm coming in hot, we're going and asking these questions, we're creating these spaces, you're creating the beautiful art that you create. And your brain is able to say, like, that just happened. Here's how to make it in a way that people can absorb the emotion and the beauty and the experience and all that. That takes so much water out of your jug. And a lot of times people need the time and the space to fill their water jug. And not everyone does it the same way. Sometimes, and not everyone does it the same way for themselves every time. Sometimes that's me sitting on my butt for hours watching Netflix. Right? And sometimes that's me going to New York City by myself, which should be exhausting, sitting in a room full of complete strangers and watching Oprah on stage. And to me, that fills my water jug for a month and a half. Whereas there's other people I'd be like, hundreds of strangers, New York City, that smell in the air, drained, right? And these are the things you have to learn about yourself, because there are acceptable water jug fillers, or ones that profit those in power. Sorry, I'm getting on my soapbox, but there are ones that, like, we've been told, like, go get a manicure or a pedicure. Why am I spending my money on, my nails aren't doing that? It's the moment of relaxation. What if I gave myself that moment of space and relaxation and really empowered my inner self back up? Because then I might be a threat to the powers that be, God forbid. But like, just the idea of that pause and that space and that comfort with yourself is, whew.
Yeah, I think it takes an enlightened person to really know how to refill their coffers with energy. Like, it could be even like literally taking your shoes off and walking barefoot in the grass in your backyard and just letting the breeze roll over you and listening to the birds and, kicking the stray cats out of your yard. That's where I get a lot of energy from that. They're really loud. They yell a lot. So I'm like, get out of here. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be like going to Marshall's and buying like 70 candles. although I do love that as well. And that gets me super pumped. I love doing that. But yeah, no, I do think it's like, that's one of the things I'm learning as an adult. I guess I'm an adult at this point at 46.
Yeah, you fake it. You don't have
I
to.
know.
You can be an adult when you want. You can be.
I know. I'm like, who's
Yeah.
in charge? Oh, I am. Damn it. Yeah. So just kind of realizing that, and like, I get energy from conversations like this. I get energy from photographing, anything like, I mentored 2 high school students the other week, and they came in their like school uniforms, and like we had no plan for photographs. And I'm like, you watch my plan. The plan is in no plan. The plan is looking at the light and getting excited. And they were like, whoa, I didn't know you were going to have so much energy. They wrote their thank you cards to me, and they were like, we had no idea we were going to leave feeling so energized. And I was like, what? That's so exciting that's also very difficult to energize a high school student and to get them excited about what you do for a job. Oh my God, it's like really hard. So I feel like I won the lottery there that day. That felt pretty good.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm going to stick on this train of impacting the younger generations.
All right.
So I'd love to hear a little bit about how the experience as a mother in this ever-changing world of finding belonging. And as you go through your journey of who is Carla and where Carla's others all come into the puzzle, how that has kind of played. I know you have 2 amazing children. I mean, I met them. God, I don't even know how old they were when I met them, but I feel like I've watched them grow up online too. And they are 2 beautiful souls. So I'd love to hear a little bit from you about what like motherhood has been like going through this kind of navigation.
Oh my gosh. So the big joke in my family and with myself and my kids, excuse me, I totally just burped. I'm going to say that sentence again. I'm sorry. I'm going to take a sip of water.
I love a good burp. See?
Oh man, I was like holding it down too. Okay. So the big joke in my family with myself and Jack and Georgie is they think I turn everything into a life lesson, which that is actually reality. They're like, Mom, can I just vent to you about my day? And I'm like, sure. And then they start going, and, there might be issues with friends or with, whatever. And I'm like, well, and I hear them, and now I know I have to validate their feelings and make them feel like they can continue to still come to me. Sure. However, I cannot seem to help myself in then saying, well, have you thought about it from their perspective? Maybe we don't know if you go back to the thing, you just never know what's going on in somebody's life. I say that to them all the time. They're probably so sick of it, but they know it. And they know it at their core. They know that's the first thing I'm going to say. If you say you have a headache, the first thing I'm going to say is, have you drank enough water? If you tell me somebody's being mean to me or bullying me or this is what's happening, the next thing I'm going to say is we don't know what's going on in their life. But also, if anyone hits you, you can hit them back and I won't get mad at you. Bad parenting, but whatever. So, I think the journey with what you're talking about and being a mom and having all this kind of woven through me it's interesting. For example, I was walking through the mall the other day with Georgie, who's 14. And we walked by, I want to say it was American Eagle. I'm almost 100% sure it was American Eagle. And I stopped in my tracks because in their display window, their main display window, they had someone who looked like me weight-wise, but it was a Black woman in her underwear. She had cellulite. She had like double bellies. She had big arms, and she was proud as hell standing there. I don't know if you've seen this picture. I was like, whoa. And the thing is, my kids already know what I'm going to say because this has been a conversation of don't fat shame people. Don't do it. You don't know what's going on with their health. You don't know how hard they work or the choices they make, or, they're not necessarily sitting at home drinking soda and eating like cheese doodles. Like that's not their reality. You don't judge them, you know? And that's like, I'm very, very passionate about that. And so she already knew because I talk about it a lot and I say, well, and I said to her, gosh, it's so nice to see somebody that looks like me in the window. And she was like, yeah, Mom, that's like she was like, and the photo's beautiful and she looks so great. And it was just like, it was not this overly retouched image. They let her be who she was. And I was like, wow. And again, it was like just walking through the mall and having that moment with my daughter where, you hear all these things, people say raising a daughter is really, you have to be very careful. You have to be very mindful. You have to be very present. You can't, be self-deprecating. And I'm not. Like, I just am not. I am who I am. If I want to look different, I need to make different choices and do different things and, whatever. But, and then balance it with raising a son. That's also very different. It's also something I have to be very mindful of, especially a son who looks like he's 100% white and he's part Mexican. He's very, very proud of that Mexican piece, and he's holding on to it with both hands, boy, real tight. And it's like he wants all of his friends to know how Mexican he is.
Yeah.
He's like very, very proud of it. However, it's counterbalanced with this overwhelming sense of white shame where he's not proud to be a white male right now. And so that's a very interesting and a little bit of a heartbreaking balance to watch your child not be happy with who they are. Because my daughter, she has other issues where, she's come out as pansexual. And so that's like her flag to fly and her other, right? And she's very vocal about it and very supportive and very who she is. And granted, she's not had a girlfriend or a boyfriend. She's 14 and she's the first one to tell me, Mom, I'm 14. Like, I just know who I like. And I'm like, good for you. And Jackson, he plays on a basketball team where he's seemingly the only the only white kid on the team. And he just feels like so connected to these teammates and friends. And, he's just like, Mom, I am who I am. Yeah. But he also makes the comments about, oh, stupid white people, or, oh God, white people this, white people that. Yeah. And I guess I kind of have done that too. Like when Dominique and I get together, we make fun of white people, but and it's just not the way to do it, I guess. It's like I'm watching and I'm like, ooh, this has kind of come back to me at a different space here where I also am an adult and I also I don't have shame about who I am, but I'm also very open and aware and I'm the advocate for everybody, and so is he, but it's just a very tricky thing that I haven't really talked about yet with anybody. Yeah. I've just been kind of thinking about it in my head and just wondering what I could do differently to just, have you ever heard anybody even talk about that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well,
what have you heard?
Well, I've heard there's so many. Well, I think it depends where you're coming from. I think people are, especially the racial conversation and what is white. Like we talk about what is black. We talk about what is a person of color. We talk about what is a minority. We're very accustomed to delineating those things. But we never talk about what white is. And I actually, in an earlier podcast with Courtney Sharp, she and I were talking about the fact that we dance around the topic of whiteness and what white means. For some reason, white is normal. And white majority, it tends to be, if you're in a gendered situation, it's straight white men. And this whole idea of whiteness being something that we're not allowed to really talk about, but we just live in. Right. And so this space of understanding what white is, to me, white is something different than what white would be to you, what white would be to Jack, what white would be to somebody that would say, right, may or may not be part of a very supremacist dynamic that would say, I am all white. Their view of white would be very different than another person's view of white that would be right next to them. And so for me personally, here's how I have not sorted it out, but I am playing with the fact that I have, and I think of this as a privilege, I have the privilege to have been welcome into white spaces for the most part and to pass as a white person for so much of my life, but also to understand at this point in my 30s that I have a platform because I have been given opportunities that those that might be a shade darker than I am or might look different than I do or may not have had the opportunities of having a white mother, that I have the platform that I need to be able to make the space to amplify voices that might not have been heard already and give that. Because it's not my job. It's not my job to define what whiteness is for every human, right? But it's to understand that there are other people around and give space, that everybody really does belong here. And this whole construct of race, it is a construct. It's a societally created construct. I don't know, Jane Elliott, I think her name is. I don't know if you've heard of her. She is, she's the woman that, oh God, I'm going to forget, in the 60s or 70s, did an experiment around discrimination for children in elementary school. She treated people with blue eyes as though they were superior to people with brown eyes. And it was an experiment. It's crazy. If you haven't seen it, go Google it. We'll put it in the show notes for this, but and these kids are like 5, right? So they are pulling from 5 years of societal influence and really the generations that have built up in their DNA, but I won't go too deep into that. But she talks about how discrimination is something that we create. It's not the construct of race is not real. We are one human race. We all came from a very dark Black woman is what she talks about. And this whole idea that race is something that we get so stuck on and we feel so much shame about. We feel so much belonging or not enoughness around that, like, if we were to pull back and realize that it's all just the amount of melanin in your skin and how much exposure you have to the sun kind of thing, if we actually viewed it through a different lens, how would it behave differently? In the same way we were just talking about, like, if you just embrace that everybody's bodies are different and everybody's going through something different every day, like, how differently would you see the world and you would see yourself? So yeah, that's the whiteness thing is such an interesting thing. And I hope it becomes a larger conversation because, again, it's become one of those things we don't talk about. As a society, we talk diversity and inclusion all the time now. It's in the mainstream, and then it gets so diluted. We don't actually talk about the majority aspect of that.
Well, the interesting thing when I'm now that I'm thinking about what you're saying too, and getting a little time to reflect on it, even when trying to describe my mom and what she was, I just said she was white. She's a lot of different things.
Yeah.
But I think that there's, in my family specifically, because I can really only speak to that. Yeah. There is such a difference between my dad's heritage and my mom's. And my dad, there's another language involved. And there's a lot of cultural things that are just they were not the norm for anybody in Connecticut at that point. Right. I mean, my father, claims he was the first, like, Mexican in Hartford. I don't know that that's true or not, but, like, it's like, you go around telling people you celebrate Day of the Dead. And they're like, what's that? Now everybody knows. Thank you, Coco and Disney.
Yes.
But, like, I love that movie.
You too.
But, like, that's a huge part of my growing up. That wasn't just, like, something I just picked up now because I like the art. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's something I believe in, and I like, it's part of our growing up, and it's been a part of my kids growing up. Like, they moved into my childhood home when they were little kids with altars already up to celebrate the lives of lots of people we have lost. They've grown up seeing that. It's their day to day. It's their norm. We cook a ton of Mexican food all the time. It's not like, they know how to make rice and beans. They know how to make huevos. They know how to make enchiladas and tacos. And it's like a huge thing that's, part of our culture, where there's foods that identify with it. There's languages that identify with it. They see my relatives from Mexico and they know they are Mexican. And so it just becomes this contrast of them and their identity, and then circles back into what I was talking about in the beginning, is a sense of belonging. Right. And so, like, in my family, with my son, I think he doesn't see the culture or the things that make his dad's family special because it's just his dad's family. Where I'm like, hey, Mimi's from Sicily, family's from Sicily, and they're very, very proud of their Italian heritage. They're very, very Italian, and they make pasta from scratch, and used to do all these, like, things with food that he didn't really get to experience that. It's just it just becomes a little diluted. So then now it becomes more about what you value in your family, right? And what we value in our family are the things that that I'm choosing to make part of their day to day, and, like, add some, specialness to that for them. But I feel like you only really, I feel like, see the difference if you go away and you come home and you're like, oh, yeah, not everyone eats hot dogs and hamburgers on Memorial Day. There is a Memorial Day in any other country. It's here.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and I tie this same thought process back to my photography, where I pretend I'm, like, in Venice. I'm like, if you were in Venice, the street signs would be interesting. You're in Hartford. Okay, you're over the stop sign. But, like, if it was in Italian, you'd be like, oh my God, that's so cool. Right. And so you kind of have to have that idea of, one of my favorite quotes is the real voyage of discovery is not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. So I think if we take those new eyes and, like, look at our own otherness or non-otherness with new eyes, and maybe just get a new appreciation for it, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, no,
I just rambled. Woo!
Oh,
sorry.
If this is how you ramble all day, please. That was great. Oh my goodness. Yeah. The other thing that I heard, I don't know if this is what your intent was, but I heard kind of in the rumblings just then and before was there's some aspects of this stuff that we're not sure if we're allowed to talk about. And so we are in the last, I don't know, 5 years, we'll say, that diversity has become a big thing. And Obama being president, I think brought a lot of the racial conversation so that's much more than 5 years, to kind of the masses. But there is this part of what you were talking about, like we have been celebrating the Day of the Dead before Disney, right? We've been celebrating that for so long. I'm not bandwagoning here. And there's this idea that because people are sharing their diversity stories, or even with the Me Too movement, that people think, oh, well, you're just hopping on that. It's like, no, these things have all been going on. We've all been living these experiences, and some of them have been trauma, and they've been trauma inducing, they've been traumatic, and so we haven't brought them up in that sense. But also, we have been told to stop. We've been told that our stories don't matter, that we can't talk, there's no room and there's no space for us here. And for us to survive in a certain space, we have to fall in line. And the fact that like the door has been open, right? That someone's been holding the door open a little bit. We have the ability to actually make space for these stories to be heard. It's not a fad, right? Like, it's not like, when people talk about kale, right? They're like, oh my God, kale's and everything. That's a fad, right? Kale has been around, but like everybody all of a sudden loves kale and then a month later they don't like kale anymore. Diversity and stories of difference, those are not kale. Those are not going to go out of style. Becoming more yourself is not going to go out of style. But there is, again, when we use these words interchangeably and we use them for things that they don't mean, we dilute them down so much that we then feel like, oh God, is my story of my family, is that enough? Can I be proud of it? Is it different or is it not? My uniqueness, is that welcome here, or do I need to fall in line of something else? Whereas like, again, my mom, I call my mom, just like you said, I call my mom a blue hair blonde.
Blue hair.
Not blue hair.
that would be me.
Yeah, I know, right? Blonde hair, blue-eyed white lady is how I explain it up in Connecticut, because so many people around me were white women and normally had short hair and looked like my mother. Right? So that was the norm around me. And now when I have these conversations, and I've purposely been in more rooms of people of color and specifically women of color, because I did not grow up around many women of color, that's a difference. I tend to be pretty light in that room. And there is some aspect of bringing that into the party, but not having it lead the conversation, because whiteness has led the conversation for a long time. So it's about sitting there and also listening and learning and allowing the other voices that haven't had the platform or the volume that they deserve, or the foundational support that they deserve, giving them the space. So then I can, like my mother and I last week, and I'm so grateful. My mother has said to me, like, you can share any of the stuff we go through. I was like, not sure if you want me to, but we had these conversations we had a conversation about Black hair and, why it's not okay to touch someone's hair and what that means. And it wasn't this shame-filled conversation. It's having this conversation with someone you love, but also pushing up against societal barriers. Like, we were talking about stuff and she's like, I just don't understand. And I said, okay, 1, there's a lot to learn there. 2, there's work that you can do yourself. I can't do it for you. But 3, please just don't touch people's hair and take my word for it.
Oh my gosh.
And she was like, okay. And she wasn't like,
right.
But it was like, I don't understand why it's a problem, because she even said to me, like, you touch my hair. And I was like, but you're my, like, I said, there is a whole power difference. There is a whole historical difference. There's a lot that goes into all that. I welcome you again to study on it. I am not the scholar to teach. I'm happy to give you some resources, but there is some room that we need to give each other to learn and to make this space for people that may think it's a kale, right? And say, you know what? Don't keep it there. Here are some books. Read them, learn, understand why this is a thing that will actually liberate you too. Even if you're in the majority in whatever category it is, it will liberate you as a human being.
Well, it's like the same thing with personal boundaries. If you even simplify it and say, do you go up to every pregnant woman you know and touch her belly? God damn, I hope you do not. Do not do that. Do not. No, don't touch people you don't know. Don't touch people you know. If I a person I know and love, I see them and I say, permission to approach the bench before I touch their belly. And they just laugh. And I'm like, I don't just roll up on people and stroke their stomach. Like, that's so rude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's so, but yeah, no, I that's so interesting to have that conversation about all the boundaries and the learning and the lessons. It's complicated.
Well, and even like a pregnant woman, right? Like this, obviously right now we're in the throes of some pretty hot political shifts, changes, decisions, whatever you'd like to call what's going on right now, where a woman's body is not her own. So if you're really thinking about the fact that like there are people that feel as though they have ownership over a woman's uterus and a woman's reproductive system and her choice of whether or not to have a child, like that's the history why, right? It's, don't touch other people, but really like that's not your space. That's not, no, there's so much in that. That's not okay for you to do. Boundaries, yes. Keep your hands to yourself as like you learn in kindergarten and before, yes. But also there's more that goes to that. And to understand what goes into that will help you become a better advocate for other people to be treated the way they'd like to be treated.
Absolutely. I could not agree more.
Goodness. Okay. Oh my goodness, I'm so hot. Okay, so. I have so many things. I feel like So, all right. I want to hear if you could talk to Carla of 2012. You can go 2011 if you'd like. What's something that she wouldn't believe about life right now if you told her?
Damn, where was I in 2011?
That's when we met.
Oh,
so that's where
my God.
Yeah.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Uh-huh.
Oh man, I don't think I would have believed. Wow, my life is so different from then.
Yeah.
Well, I'm like, just like, did you watch my faces go do the little dreamy, like, TV sitcom, watery water, like, like that's where my head just went.
Like a montage.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no. Oh, wow. Whoa. I don't know that I would have believed. Now, are you talking about like life in general or like personally?
Anything.
The first thing I go to is personally. I don't know that I would have believed that I would have pared down so much with my staff and my work to just me. I was in like a growth explosion when I met you.
Yeah.
Like I was in the throes of it. Like I was so busy and not in a good way. Like it was not healthy. I think I missed out on a lot of things in my personal life. Things with my kids I would have done differently. But I think it all led me to where I am now. I don't regret anything I did.
Yeah.
With my whole life, I don't, because it led me to where I am right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to look at the business part of it is interesting for me because it was so big. It was like crazy big. And now it's just me. Like, and I love it. Right.
Yeah.
And then personal life wise, I always felt very overwhelmed by being in my space. It's a really big house. And it's a house I grew up in, and I never felt like capable enough to take care of everything in this house. That was something my ex-husband would do. It's like everything was always like fixed or maintained, or the garden was taken care of. The groceries were grocery shopped. He cooked, he did stuff with the kids. Like now I do all of that in addition to all my business stuff. And it just feels good. Every once in a while I step back. If I'm like feeling a little stressed about money or about things, I stop and I'm like, you brought yourself where you are today. You're doing it all on your own 100%. Nobody else is helping you. And that's something to be really proud of. And it's okay to be a little like concerned or to be aware, I guess, of what's to lie ahead. Cause then I'm not just like running around blind. Like I feel like I was. Like I feel like I'm so much wiser right now. And I don't know that I would have believed I would be where I am now in the mental state that I'm in, I guess. And just that I'm really happy. So yeah, I know it's not like earth shattering, but
no.
That's like, it feels it when I look back and I just think of where I was.
I'm going to distill it. I'll reflect back what I heard and you can tell me if I'm like you can tell me if I'm hitting it on like I was before, or you're like, no, Nikki, that's not what I meant at all. Shush. But there is something about this idea of really being able to fully rely on you, and that you have everything you need, and that you can do what your intuition is telling you to do. When there is this space of what, I don't know if you watch Pose, the TV show. If you don't, please do. It's on Netflix and it's also on FX. It's delightful. They have one of the houses that they have in there is called the House of Abundance. So that word's in my head right now. When you have all this abundant business coming your way or opportunity coming your way, especially if it's unexpected or it is overwhelming, that you're like, I'm burning out, I'm overwhelmed, I'm underwater. A lot of times it can feel like I, as one human being, can't handle all this. And so I need to bring all these people in and all this support in. And when you do that, especially knowing you, the person that you are, that will be like a mama bear and like take care and make sure that people have the space and make sure that I gave you the attention to ask you the questions and taking care of all that, it takes away from your ability to be you. And so this idea of growth, again, scaling up, like we were talking about before, that means success. Sometimes that distracts from your ability to be successful. When you're actually able to hone in on the thing that makes you you and makes you successful and makes you light up, sometimes that's just you. And it's not bad to be a solopreneur. It's not bad to be comfortable and anchored in who you are. It actually is this beautiful thing where you're not afraid that you're not enough in that space. You can rely on yourself and you can be firm-footed and flat-footed and say, I got this. I got the yard work. And if I don't, Georgie and Jack, can you help me, please? Like, I can do these things. I don't need to outsource them. Right. And I'm just going to clarify this because if me of 2012 was listening to this right now, I'd be like, shit, she's telling me I have to keep doing everything all by myself. That's not what it means. Right. Like, it's this understanding and this knowing of the things you can and should be doing and the things that you can and should be letting go of, and really taking the time to know yourself and not, there's a lot of vices that keep you away from getting to know who you are and numb you from those things. But really, if you allow yourself to sit in the silence and get to know who you are, the only person, this is what I've said since I was a little kid, and disturbingly little probably, that I was having these insights. Like, the only person that you have to be okay with every time you wake up and every time you go to bed for your entire life is yourself. And if you operate like that, probably like really, really young, but like you operate like that and you stay in that space, what is there? That's the life. That's the life. Because if you're doing things that are aligned with who you are, you're attracting the people that love you for who you are. That's the world to live in. So being solo, or being not even solo, right? However you want to call that, paring it down for the core meat that you need in life. And if you don't eat meat, apologies, whatever you want to say, protein.
Girl, I do.
I know you and we do together. Come on now.
That's right.
But like, this whole idea of being enough as yourself allows you to not look to everybody else to fill the needs that you have.
Mm-hmm. And actually, you clarified that so perfectly and reflected back, so I actually heard what I really said and made me realize that, there's nobody to hide behind. With a team, I was like, no, you take the spotlight, you take the credit. There's the big money shot. Oh no, you get up on the ladder and you do it. Yes. What the hell was I doing? Why was I doing that? Because then I've had some people like totally like stab me in the back and like turn on me, and like I'm like, why did I give all these people the benefit of the doubt and the chances? I know why I did. I know why I did that, because it's now leading me to where I am now, where I'm standing free and clear, and it is 100% just me with work, and I own that and I accept it and I love it, because then now when people hire me, the big thing they put out, for business in general is, what makes you different from me? Like, why would I hire you as opposed to her or him, or this team or this studio? What do you bring to the table that's different? And I can't hide behind anybody but me. It's 100% me. And I am like super comfortable with that. And that also translated to my personal life as well, where I was alone. I was single for a long time. And I got to the point, no joke, and this is so annoying because everyone says this, but it's so true, where I was really comfortable being alone, and I was okay with being alone, and I was happy. I was satisfied. I was like, yeah, I know there's other things that, the components that a relationship brings to life, but I'm really happy with where my life is. I have really great friendships,
Yeah.
and my relationship with my children is amazing. I love my home. I love my job. Like, I want for nothing really. And of course, right after I say that, like, I meet Melissa. So I am where I was, but that just goes to show you, like, I'm not just going to date anybody
Right.
to pass the time. I'm not going to settle. Like,
Yeah.
I'm with her because I want to be with her. And
Yeah.
I never was like that in the past. I think I was really afraid to die alone like my mom did. And
Mm,
now and that's like one lesson in my life. I feel like I had to learn, and I had to really believe it at my
yeah.
core, was that I am enough, and
Yes.
that whether I'm technically alone or not, it's okay. Um, and I used to feel really bad for my mom. I thought she was very lonely, and she was, in fact, really lonely. And I just never wanted to, you know, die like that, or just have a life like that where she just didn't
Yeah.
have companionship or company or friendships. And she didn't. She was a very solitary person. And
Yeah.
now I've just kind of, that's one of those things I had to come to some truths about. And you just reflected it back to me, Nikki. Thank you.
Hey, I will say, I went to this workshop Mother's Day weekend, and one of the aspects of it was, it's called Wild Soul Movement. A previous guest of mine, it's her workshops. They're incredible. If they come to Connecticut, please do go. But one of the things that I took out of it, because I like went in knowing something was going to come, not knowing what it was, and crying fetal position on the floor moment, I hit a point where I was like, I'm not meant to be here. And if all the history books remained as they were, Nikki Innocent as a product of a white woman and a Haitian immigrant in this country 10 years before I was conceived, it was not okay to have that happen. So I'm not, in Trevor Noah's words, I'm born a crime, right? If not for the choices of people before me and the decisions they made, I would not exist here today. And because of the experiences that they had and the experiences that I've gone through right now, I'm meant to be exactly who I am, where I am right now. And yes, there is fear, right? Yes, there is this fear of being alone, but the fear of being alone, it's kind of like the levels that goes, the opportunity to shine, the opportunity, like you were talking about getting the best shot. I could give that to someone else. I could give that space to someone else. I could build it up. The marketer in me could market someone else to do and say the things that I'm hoping to do and say, but it'll be a pretty empty life. I'll be alone even if I'm surrounded by people. So why not step into that space and be what I'm meant to be? And Carla Hernandez, right? She is here. She is on this
Yeah.
earth to be the person that takes photos of the things that are beautiful and magical, who shares with, I'm not going to say without filter, but shares with less filter than others, right? Who is willing to create the space and use her bodily experience as an example. Like that is your calling. And whether that be surrounded by a gazillion people or that be a solitary moment by yourself, like you're stepping into it. And I'm going to cry. So I'm going to try to pull myself together. But like, I don't know. I just think that that's truly beautiful. And yeah, 2011, 2012, Carla. I think she might not believe it. I think
No,
she'd be
no, because another component to where I was at that point is I had blue hair and purple hair, and I had a huge transformation where
Yeah.
I no longer have. Now it's like fighting to be gray right now, and a lot of what I was doing then too was keeping people neck up, stay in my head, literally stay on my head, stay on my hair, don't travel down, because I was so uncomfortable in my own body, and now I'm not. And it's like confidence is like it's like a pheromone for people. They just react to it, and they're like, just as a human, they're like, wow, look, that she is like strutting through and just walking confidently and with purpose. And there's just something attractive about that. And I notice when others around me move the same way. I like the phrase you just said. Was it less filter than others?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I was going to say no filter. I was like, but I think you do
I have
use
a
that.
little bit. I have an Oprah filter. She knows when she can get down, and she knows when to just button it up.
Oprah has, so she has been my boundary inspiration. Once you start looking into her boundaries and listening to her talk about them, they are so much more than you expect. Her warmth makes you feel like she's so much more open. and willing to share all the things than she really is. I'll send you some podcast episodes. They're delightful.
Please do. I would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, thank you. Now, one of my favorite question to ask that I don't even know if I told you I was going to ask it. Sorry. Is what are you most excited about in the coming year?
Ooh.
I know. You can take a minute if you want.
Oh, I already know the answer. Which is, I don't know what that. I don't know what that says about me. That I immediately know what that answer is.
That's a good thing.
And it seems like such a whatever. I'm not going to preface it. The thing I'm most excited about for the next coming year, and it's been woven already into this year, is my follow up, because that is something I really believe. The fortune is in the follow-up for everybody on every level, in every aspect of life, not just business, but in personal, in so many things. I've seen it pay out. You follow through. If you say you're going to do something, do it. And so it's just been like a mantra of mine for the past few years, but I have like a very active list of things that like I'm following through in my heart with people, where it's like I have these like soul connections with people in my industry that eventually, we might work together. I'm hoping we do. But I really just want to be around them more. And even if we just create stuff for fun that leads to that, I think they just need to, the stars are going to just be aligned at some point with the people that I'm following through with and following up with for the work part. And then with the, for personal parts, I'm, following through on, making my home be a place that I just continually feel safe in and feel warmth from and just like want to be at, and I feel like that's just one of those things that it's easy to take for granted, but when you don't have it, you don't take it for granted. And so I never want to get to a space where I don't have a home that is warm and welcoming and safe. And so I have a gratitude board that I regularly write. I'm very grateful for a safe, loving home. So just to keep focusing on that, and with like gardening and my plants, and like I love decorating and color and design and art and that kind of stuff, following through on, it doesn't even have to be like big ticket items. It's just like finding stuff online or sale items or things that just feel good together. Like I love that. And so I just want to make my family feel safe and warm and welcome in their home. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to in this year, which sounds incredibly boring, but it's not at all to me. I feel very energized, like thinking about it.
If you only knew, if you talk to my therapist or my coach or my sister or my mom, anybody I talk to, I'm like, follow through. Where is the follow through? So I feel like for that being such an anchoring point for your year, that is beautiful. And right, again, in the same way we were talking about before, your follow through begets more follow through from others. So it's just bringing in that good, wonderful, it's that confident energy you were talking about, that follow through energy that's showing up. Like, that's beautiful. Oh, well, I'm excited for your year. I feel like I'm going to have to check in on this one. I'm like,
you're gonna have to follow through and check in on me.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you so much, truly. And I think we should talk again. Just saying.
I feel like I could talk for hours with you. This was so easy and insightful, and I feel like super energized right now. Oh, my water jug is full.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very full.
Yes. It overflows sometimes, right?
It does. That does.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Carla.
Thanks, Nikki.
All right. Bye.
Well, I hope your water jug is overflowing as well. I always am so amped after these kind of conversations. And I really, really hope it's contagious, because, oh my goodness, it's the best way to go on with the rest of your day. So we made it to the end of the episode. I hope you liked it. Oh my goodness. If you laughed, I felt myself laughing re-listening to this again. And I know I was trying to keep myself together, because who wants to hear me full on cackle in their ear every 5 minutes? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you don't subscribe, please do. Take a look over on our website for all the amazing things that's going on. Over on social media, you can get that information. And if you go to the Linktree account, it's all in there. I'm going to drop all this good stuff into these show notes that you can find over on nikkyinnocent.com/podcast. You'll see Carla's wonderful face on there. You can click into there and see all the links that go along with this episode. And finally, I just want to put a plug in for this one more time. If you have any love to share, any topics you'd like to hear about, any guests that you were just dying to hear from, please do head over and fill out the podcast outreach form so we can hear from you. I have some good ideas here, but I would love to hear from you too. All right? I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will talk to you all very, 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 very soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.